Hello, this is Idodmg and welcome back to the channel. In this Diablo 4 video, I want to talk to you about the new Season 4 Loot Reborn, positives and negatives. Is it really as good as they say? It seems like everywhere you look, everyone's talking about how great the season is. It's Diablo 4 Reborn. This is how Diablo should have been from the start, so on and so forth. In this video, I want to go ahead and break it down for you. We're going to balance the pros and cons here, some things that I like, don't like, and we're going to share my opinions as well. I don't know how many hours I've played, but I have a level 100 Necromancer that I've been just blasting with the end game. And I'll say I've enjoyed the season to a degree. Diablo 4 Season 4 is a decent season. There's some pretty interesting additions and changes to the game that make the game more approachable. Now, this could be good or bad, depending on what type of action RPG player you are personally. In Season 4, they made the game a lot simpler, a lot more just straightforward. I would say a little bit easier, and there's a couple reasons for that. The main reason being with their itemization changes that we'll talk about a little bit deeper here in the video. But basically, they made it so your base attributes, so if you're playing an intelligence as a necromancer, strength barbarian, and so on, those are more accessible than they were before. Basically, the previous seasons of Diablo 4 had really niche affixes on them that were just kind of not really confusing, but just kind of like there's so many different random weird affixes. They pretty much cut out all that and just focus on the good stats now, basically. I think that's why a lot of people think the game is a lot easier, is just because you have access more easily to those just better stats in general. It seems like in Season 4, they pretty much just kind of cut out all the fat and just put in all the good stuff that everyone's been wanting. And so at face value, Season 4, it's pretty fun. It'll draw you in when you very first start. But the further you play and start to break down all the new systems, that's when you kind of take a step back and you try to kind of think about all of it. And that's what I want to talk to you about. One of the big changes in Season 4 is you're going to get to level 100 very, very quickly. I think I was about level 80, maybe 90 before I even really started to think about my build and optimizing at all. Again, I did play a Necromancer from the start, and I went minions, not because I knew that it was the meta. I honestly didn't even know until I was playing minions, and I started to hear people saying how OP minion builds are. And I think that is why I got really bored. I think it was day 2 of Season 4 that I was seriously bored of the season, and I almost just quit playing Diablo 4 for this season because I was just that bored. We were actually talking about how bored I was. I guess it was just kind of me complaining about how bored I was with the season. And Diz actually asked me, are you bored of the game or are you bored of the build? And I don't know. I don't know if I've just been more grumpy this season or what it is, but I was like, no, it's the game. But I honestly, a few days later, I decided, you know what, let's look at some other builds. And the build I'm running now has no minions, and I'm actually having quite a bit of fun with the build, trying to find out all the little synergies and kind of making my own build in a way. And really just making my own build. That's what I just love, is just kind of messing around with different builds. I mean, that's kind of the point in action RPGs anyway. That was the first big change in Season 4, was just the rate of leveling. It's very quick. I think that's why we're probably going to see more people playing hardcore, just because it is that much easier just to level up if you do happen to die. But the speed at which you level up now in Season 4, I mean, I'll be honest, I like it. It lowers the amount of just that leveling grind so you can get to the end game sooner, I guess. I want to talk about itemization. This is a huge thing for Season 4. I mean, that's the name of the season, is Loot Reborn. They pretty much, as I said at the beginning of the video, they cut out all the boring and weird and like niche affixes, and they just put the good affixes there so you can compare items a lot easier. And instead of having an item that has a bunch of just weird affixes on it, it's going to have 3 base affixes. And all itemization I'm going to talk about here is your item level 925 gear. You're going to get to it so quick. The ancestral gear, your legendaries, and uniques as well. The sacred and normal, they have some differences, but let's be honest, you're going to blast through to the end game really quickly anyways. This will be more pertinent anyway. Not only did they make the base affixes on an item, the affixes that the item comes with, just more straightforward. Basically, if it has your main stat and max health on it, you're going to be then looking for a third stat, whether it be damage, crit, overpower damage, whatever type of build you're trying to do. It's a lot more straightforward in that sense. But not only do they do that, but you could also have a chance for an affix to be roll as a greater affix. And what this will do is this will take that affix on the max range that it can roll plus 50%, I believe it is. So greater affixes are a lot stronger and are really, really good. If you've played last Epoch, it's basically exalted items is basically what greater affixes is in Diablo 4. And you'll see a lot of parallels where they learned things from last Epoch and they've implemented them into Diablo 4. And I can't fault them for that at all. I think it's great. The other thing with these greater affixes, they have a chance for all of your affixes to become greater, although this is very rare to see. I've seen a couple double greater affix items, and if they're the affixes I want, great. If not, then that's kind of part of the loot chase, I guess. The other thing with greater affixes too is if you want to re-roll or enchant it for a different affix, it gets rid of the greater status and goes down to a normal affix. So keep that in mind as well. The other part of itemization too, and I don't know if this was new in Season 4 or when they added this, but resistances now actually work. You can actually cap your resistances, and I believe there's also a cap on armor at 9.2k with the armor cap, something like that. But actually being able to cap those resistances and actually have them work as you think they would, it makes me feel like I'm actually playing an action RPG, which is awesome. So that's your base change to itemization, is those simplified affixes and greater affix chances. But if you look at the season picture that they're using around for the Loot Reborn, they also show an anvil hammer thing, crafter thing, right? That's because that exists as well. They have actually added crafting. And you're going to see a lot of last Epoch influences into this crafting system, actually. So there's kind of two new things with crafting. The very first phase is tempering. Basically, just throw an item in there, and if it's the ancestral gear, you can add on 2 affixes. Each item slot has its own type of affix you can add on, whether it be defensive or utility or damage or weapons, whatever it is. And then you have different options that you can kind of pick from here to add on. Now, you can only have one of each type available. So if it's a piece of armor, you can't put 2 defenses on there. You'd have to put a defense and a utility, whatever the second option is there. And these are pretty cool. This is basically, if you've played Last Epoch and you know what forging potential is on Last Epoch, it's basically how much you can actually craft on an item before the item is no longer craftable or customizable. Same thing over here. When you're tempering, most items have only 5 or 6 tempering chances on them. But you only have 2, you can only add on 2 tempered affixes. So, that's 3 chances and 3 chances, if you want to think of it that way. But, you can spend all your chances on one, like you can spend all 6 chances on one temper if you want to, however you want to break it up. But I wonder if that's how they landed on 6 being the amount of chances you get. It's a pretty good system. I like it because there is that RNG of getting that perfect roll that you want, but you could also completely ruin an item if you use up all your temper chances and you don't get the tempered affix you want. That's a possibility as well. But the pools of tempered affixes it pulls from are small enough that the chances of you really ruining an item are pretty slim, but still possible. Yeah, basically tempering is Last Epoch's forging potential system. And instead of affix shards on Last Epoch, over on Diablo 4, it is tempering chances. You do have to find recipes to learn these tempering techniques, but the recipes have unlimited uses. So it's not like Last Epoch where you got to have the affix shards. Over here on Diablo 4, once you have the recipe learned, you can temper away all you want as long as you have enough chances on that piece of gear. They didn't stop there, though. They went ahead and also added another version of crafting. I don't know if I'd really call it crafting, but what they're calling it is masterworking. Masterworking is basically, if you've played Diablo 4 previously, you can remember that at the blacksmith, you used to be able to just plus up your gear a certain amount of times. Basically, that's what masterworking is, but you can plus up the item up to 12 times, and each time that you plus up the item, it will go, all the affixes on there will increase by 5%. Now, every 4 levels of the gear, so you have 3 opportunities for this to happen, where every 4 levels, a random affix on there will be chosen and increased by 25%, which is a pretty huge boost. So you're going to have 3 times that will happen. So if you have an item and that happens on the same affix 3 times, I mean, you could see a significant boost in that stat. And then if, let's say you go through all these rerolls and let's say it doesn't plus up the affix you wanted it to, you can reset the masterwork and retry to get the affix you want to be those extra big rolls if you want to. That's pretty much masterworking. Now, my problem with masterworking is the only way to get the materials to actually plus up your gear through this method is from the new game mode called the pit. The pit is basically greater rifts from Diablo 3. And, you know, funness is subjective here. For me personally, they're not the most fun thing to do. And also that feeling of you have to do them to masterwork also makes it less fun to me, just because I'm limited on choices. And, you know, I don't really have a solution for this other than let us have other sources of these materials. But, you know, at the end of the day, it is what it is. They want you to try out this new game system, and it is a way to get materials to masterwork. So I'll just put on some music and blast demons and get some materials. Pretty much how it works. The materials you get in the pit are broken up into 3 different tiers as well. I think it's the first 30 floors is tier 1, and then 31 to 60 is tier 2, and then I think tier 3 starts at 61. I think it's every 30 floors or something like that. But that's pretty much the pit, and it's timed. There's no loot in there until the very end. If you don't beat the timer, you don't get any materials. If you do beat the timer, you get materials, and then regardless at the end, if you beat the timer or not, you'll get a little bit of gear. It's not, I mean, it's like 4 pieces of gear, I think, or something like that. But yeah, you want to beat the timer, obviously, so you can get the materials. Otherwise, it's honestly is a waste of time. I know we've covered quite a bit here in this video, but if you're enjoying hanging out here with me today, talking about Diablo 4, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Let's keep going here, though. There's a couple more things I want to touch on. Helltide. Helltide is a thing that has gone through a lot of different iterations and changes since the launch of Diablo 4. And in Season 4, they've really have improved Helltides. When I very first started playing Diablo 4, the very first thing I did was go to a Helltide. And I got to tell you, the Helltide will suck you in. It is actually a lot of fun because they throw so many demons at you to slay that there's never a you barely have enough time to even like teleport out of the Helltide because they're just throwing demons at you. They added a couple things to the Helltide. Like I said, there's more monsters. The monster density is absolutely insane, and I love it. It's a great way to level up, and it's also pretty fun. They added a new item to the game as well. I think it's called the Profane Mind Cage, something like that. But it's an hour-long buff, and it increases the monster's level in the Helltide by 10 levels, and it also increases your threat level. If you do die, you lose the buff, and you have to use the item again. These items you can find throughout the game. I mean, I don't think I've ever ran out because they last for a full hour. What's really interesting with the Helltides is they've kind of made it like Grand Theft Auto in a way, but with demons. What I mean by that is your threat level is basically your wanted level. You know, on Grand Theft Auto, it's your wanted level. You get to 5 stars. They try to get you. It's kind of like that on Diablo 4 now. But there's 3 threat levels, and at each level that you go up, a demon will come out of the ground and spew monsters out at you that attack you, try to kill you. You got to take them on, kill them, and it's like a massive elite pack. And then I think the max threat level, like the Hellborn spawns, which is like a super boss in the Helltide. There's a lot. They've made the Helltides a lot better in that regard. They also have a boss that you can spawn in there, and it alerts everyone in the Helltide that the boss is being summoned. It's a really just great way to just kind of blast, zone out, level up, and get loot. And on top of that, in order to level up the Iron Wolves, which is this season's rep grind, you do have to grind the Helltide. And let me tell you, it is an absolute grind. I think I leveled from level 1 to like 90 or 100, all from Helltide. And yeah, I've taken about a 3-day break from Helltides because I really got burnt out on Helltides. So there's other things to do in the game. Obviously, in terms of like content, you know, you have just your whispers, your world quests, those still exist, your nightmare dungeons, all that stuff. But if you're getting sick or bored of Helltides, go do something else so you don't get burnt out like I did on that Helltide change. Thank you again so much for hanging out here with me today and talk about Diablo 4. I'm going to go ahead and just share some closing thoughts on Diablo 4. And hopefully, if you haven't decided if you want to play the season or not yet, hopefully I can help you make a decision here. Again, I just want to break it all down for you so you can kind of know what to expect and kind of my thoughts on it. But let's go ahead and wrap it up here with some closing thoughts. Diablo 4 Season 4 Loot Reborn, it's a lot easier. And I think that's due to just having easier access to those primary attributes more blatantly, straight buffing up your damage. I think that's a large part of it. You still can find a little bit of difficulty. I wouldn't say it's really like hard or anything. Like I guess it's all subjective anyway. By scaling the level of the pit, The Nightmare Dungeons going up. I guess those cap at level 100. I think the pit caps at 150 or 200, something like that. So, I mean, there is ways to push your build, but, you know, it all just kind of comes down to your build and how well it's set up is kind of what decides the difficulty of the game anyway. But very early on, the game is very, very easy. I mean, you're just going to melt through the content. And I don't know, it's just because I was playing Necromancer, but I feel like other classes are pretty similar. I feel like you're just going to blast through to level 100 really quickly, really easily. Now, I'll leave that up to you if that's a good or bad thing. I think for me personally, I'm okay with leveling up a little bit faster to get to the endgame content quicker. Season 4, honestly, it is great if you just want to have a mindless, grinding action RPG where you just blast through, blast demons, get loot, and just have those good dopamine hits. I mean, it's really, really good for that. If you want to really sit down and min-max and like deep dive into a build, I don't think it really exists to the extent that like Last Epoch does. For me, when I theory craft a build, I'll sit there on the build planner and I'll really try to just theory craft a build. Like over on Last Epoch, it takes me about 3-4 hours, I think, to theory craft a build. The build that I just recently theory crafted on Diablo 4 took me like 30 minutes to theory craft. So that's kind of the difference there. But again, you know, that's different player to player, but that's my experience. And I don't know. I mean, it's there if you want to theory craft and like try different builds. It does exist in Diablo 4, of course. The other thing I struggled with in Diablo 4, especially this season, was just kind of like knowing what to do next. Like I hit level 100 and I was like, okay, what do I want to do next? And then, you know, it just kind of took me a while to figure out like, I need to find a build that I find fun. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I was playing minions and it was incredibly, incredibly boring. And once I switched up builds and started to use my brain to actually think about different synergies and builds and things like that, it became a lot more fun to me. That's really where what I find fun in the game. I've noticed that when I find a build that is really fun and I blast with it for a while and grind with it for a while, I kind of get bored and I want to switch builds. I think that's perfectly normal. It's an action RPG. I mean, you're meant to tinker with builds anyway. But the big thing for me was like knowing what to do, and what really kind of helped keep me on track, I guess, was not only the DMGCREW Discord just being like, yo, let's go do this or that. Like I don't even know how Uber bosses worked entirely, to be honest with you, because I never really pushed to level 100 in the past because I just got bored of Diablo 4. I mean, this is probably the season I've pushed the most on. But the thing that kind of kept me on track in Diablo 4 was the season journey. It kind of tells you what's kind of due or work towards next, so you can progress that season journey and unlock titles and stuff like that. You know, at the end of the day, Diablo 4 Season 4, is it a lot of fun? Is it the best game ever? It's all right. It's fun. If you like Diablo 3, I think you'll really enjoy Season 4. There's been times where I'm blasting with some buddies on there. We're just slaying demons, having a good time. And those are the vibes that I remember from Diablo 3, just slaying with buddies and just having a good time. You know what I mean? Like, it is good for that if you just want to blast. That's going to wrap it up for this Diablo 4 Season 4 review video. Hopefully you found this video useful and or entertaining. If so, don't forget that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. The best way to support me and my family is through becoming a YouTube channel member today or leaving a super thanks on the video below. Your view alone means the absolute world. I thank you all for your continued support. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.